Hello, everybody. Thank you again for watching. It is the American Doofus Show. Don't be a doofus. I'm your host, Barry Welsh. Please subscribe, like, share, and comment if you would. If you'd like to support the show, it's always greatly appreciated. It's Cash App, $ American Doofus, all one word, AMERICANDUFUS, all one word. And if you'd like to email me, you can email me at americandoofus@gmail.com. And a great big huge thank you for everyone that does support the show and has supported the show. And I love you all. And tonight we start out with the fact that I received my second COVID-19 vaccination today. Okay. It hurts. It's sore. My arm's stiff. That wasn't the case with the first shot. The first shot, the day after, I was a little sore, and that was it. But this got sore moments after the injection. So I will keep everybody up to date on it. It was my choice. And I feel like, Donald Trump got his vaccinations in secret while telling the people that follow him not to get vaccinated, but he was doing it. And when people behave that way, I have to question them, and would they be someone I would follow? And so I'm choosing to, and it's not that I'm looking for followers, okay, but I'm leading by example, if you will. I'm making a choice to get the vaccine. I'm fully vaccinated now. In 14 days, it should be totally in effect. And how long it lasts, we don't know yet. Will I have adverse effects? We don't know yet. Time will tell. But I'm on here being honest with you and telling you everything that's going on. And we've got a couple of stories that possibly have been overlooked or not as much attention drawn to them as should be, because, and justifiably so, the murder trial of the police officer that was on the neck of George Floyd for 9 minutes and 29 seconds, longer than the original narrative. That's overshadowing a lot of things, and again, justifiably so, because that's resonating throughout America. But a couple of other stories I want to point to that are worthy of being shared, in my opinion. And the first one is they're both troubling stories. They're both very troubling stories, in my opinion. The first one is in regard to a 5-year-old boy, and I'm just going to play the tape. I will say this is from CNN. It's at the bottom, but just to give credit where credit is due, as we always do.
Get in the car. Oh, we're going to have problems. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I don't want to hear it.
The video is disturbing and difficult to watch. 2 Montgomery County, Maryland police officers screaming at and threatening a 5-year-old boy after he walked out of his elementary school. They locate him 0.2 of a mile away.
How old are you?
5.
5. You feel like you can make your own decisions? Huh? You feel like you can do what you want?
The boy's mother, Shantae Grant, filed a lawsuit in January against the officers, Dion Holiday and Kevin Chrisman, accusing them of assault and intentional infliction of emotional distress. This video just released by the police department. Also named in the suit, Montgomery County, accused of violating the boy's rights under state law, and the Montgomery County Board of Education, accused of negligence. Back in January 2020, the suit alleges the kindergartner walked off the East Silver Spring Elementary School premises when he was not being properly supervised. School employees called police to help find him. The video shows Officer Christman putting the young boy into the squad car to drive him back to school.
I don't want to go.
I don't care.
The suit states this was extremely frightening to him because he thought he was going to be taken to jail.
The encounter between the police and this little 5-year-old turns into such an abrasive, offensive encounter, it's as if they are treating him like he just committed an armed robbery. We counted 19 times when one or both officers talked about beating him, that he needs to be beaten.
The officers arrive at the school with the student moments later, loudly taunting the child as they enter.
I mean, how do you learn that type of behavior at 5?
See, this is why people need to be their kids.
Sit down.
2008 Cadillac.
Sit down.
Shut that noise up now. I'm tired of your mama, let me beat you.
According to the complaint, this remark led the boy to believe that Holiday was about to cause him physical harm. Video shows Holiday screaming at the boy, inches from his face.
Ain't nobody
School employees discuss the child's behavior with the officers as they wait for his mother to arrive. Officer Holiday suggesting how she would discipline the child.
A crate. Cradle.
That's right, Val.
You act like a little beast.
According to the union, both officers were subjected to corrective action. The police department refused to say whether they had been disciplined. Both remain on the force. The union's vice president telling CNN, "In that case, it was a school matter, not a police matter. We should have never been called to that." Neither officer responded to our request for comment. The Montgomery County School Board president and superintendent said in a statement, "Our hearts ache for this student. There is no excuse for adults to ever speak to or threaten a child in this way. We have asked MCPS leadership to ensure that the school system's procedures and expectations are clear to all staff." A discussion ensues when Grant arrives, during which she talks about her struggles to discipline her son.
I can't discipline him because the government won't allow you. Yes, you can. I can't beat him. Why? Because I'm not going to prison. You don't go to prison for beating your child.
Grant's lawyers deny there has been abuse or problems at the family's household. Grant, the officers, and a school employee soon move their discussion to a conference room, where at one point Officer Chrisman puts handcuffs on the boy's arm, seemingly to make a point.
This is for people that don't want to listen and don't know how to act.
And minutes later, these parting words to the boy.
Meeting adjourned.
So
Enjoy yourself today when you
our
get there.
director.
The recording ends with a thank you and an apology.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry.
But this was before Grant learned how the officers and school officials had treated her son before she arrived at the school.
Certainly, she would not have been in the same demeanor with the police at the end and the school officials if she had known all the things that had transpired before.
Athena Jones, CNN, New York.
There you go. Obviously, I did not interrupt that with commentary or by pausing. What's there to say? Saying you want to crate a 5-year-old, you want to put a 5-year-old into a crate, that he's a beast and needs to be treated like an animal. We have a lot of problems. We have a lot of problems in our society. We've got a long way to go as a society. And this next story is from CBS News, St. Louis, Missouri. The incident happened in 2017, 3 years, 4 years ago now, almost. What happened was there were protests going on in St. Louis over police brutality, and a Black police officer had gone undercover with the protesters, unbeknownst to some of his white colleagues.
3 police officers are on trial in St. Louis accused of brutally beating one of their own. In September of 2017, Detective Luther Hall was working undercover at a protest that erupted after a local police officer was found not guilty of murdering a Black man that he shot after a car chase. So while at the demonstration, Hall was severely beaten by a group of police officers who say that they thought he was a protester. The trial against 3 of those officers is in its 2nd week. Following this story for us now is investigative reporter Lauren Traeger from our St. Louis affiliate. Thank you so much for joining us, Lauren. Man, this is a really, really interesting and disturbing case that I am surprised has not risen to the level of a national story. So that being said, many people may not have heard of this story, particularly because, you know, the incident happened back in 2017. So bring us up to speed. What happened to Luther Hall back then?
Well, I think you make an excellent point. It really has not gained a lot of national attention. And that's been kind of surprising to us here in the local media as well. And I think you kind of summarized it pretty well. There was some community outrage over that trial where that officer was acquitted in that murder case. So Luther Hall is a St. Louis police officer. He is African-American. He was assigned that night as a detective to work undercover. So there were protests that evening. He was there not, he says, to monitor the protesters, but to gather evidence of potential crime. So if there was property damage or people who were looking to harm others, he was there blending in with the protesters. He was in plain clothes. He did not have his duty weapon with him. And he was filming, just as many protesters do, of course. So he was blending into the crowd. And on the stand during this trial, he very emotionally described what he says happened to him, which was essentially in a very short time. He says he was rushed by a group of officers. All 5 officers who have been charged in this case are white. 3 of them still remain on trial right now. And Luther Hall says in just a matter of 15 or 20 seconds, he was taken to the ground. He was arrested and in the process pretty severely beaten and injured. He had significant injuries to his face, to his body, and he's had residual impacts from those injuries to this day. So plates in his neck and near his shoulders. He's had.
Pausing it here just for a second, because we've covered protests. This shows about alternative news and alternative information and drawing light on things that have not gotten any attention or not enough attention. And the protesters have gotten a bad name because you take the fact that this is a police officer out of it. They arrested and then brutally beat a black man. Okay, he just happened to be a police officer. This has happened many times. Okay, and it's part of a system.
Pancreatitis, can still have some difficulties eating from all of this. And notably, he did have a partner that night as well, who is white and also undercover. They were not together at the time, but the partner also took the stand and testified that he too was arrested that night as a potential protester, but he was arrested by black officers and he claimed it was a completely textbook arrest. He was not injured in any single way. So some of the local community.
Again, not all cops are bad, but I do understand why people feel that way, and I understand why people say that until the good ones, the good police, get rid of the bad police in their own units, then they're all bad. I understand why people feel that way. I don't personally, but that doesn't mean it doesn't mean that we have to hate each other. Okay, we have to remind ourselves of things like that, that we can have differences of opinions, but it doesn't have to mean hate, because we're becoming conditioned that hate and evil and violence and oppression are acceptable, and it's very dangerous.
Community outrage here, of course, has been that Luther Hall was beaten because these officers, it's alleged, believed he was a protester and just simply a black man. And that's certainly been a lot of the testimony that's been coming out in this trial.
Yeah, so the trial, there's 3 officers on trial, but they weren't the only officers implicated in his beating. At least one other officer has he's already pleaded guilty. How did he explain himself on the stand? Because the other thing that happened too is, these officers weren't exactly upfront about what happened.
That's called
Yeah,
a cover
certainly
up.
part of the allegations from the prosecutors here is that the officers themselves had exchanged some text messages prior to the protests even starting, indicating that they wanted to beat up protesters. Essentially, that's what some of the text messages, according to the prosecutors, indicate.
They wanted to get them some. Let's go get some. We talked about it a lot on this show. It's sometimes current situations just weigh heavy on your soul, and I'm going through one of those periods where my words aren't necessary because the actions are self-evident.
That officer that you mentioned, he's now former officer Randy Hayes. He has since pleaded guilty, and he was questioned very significantly by the defense because initially he had said that Luther Hall was resisting or wouldn't put his hands up, wasn't complying with the arrest, and that's why they had to use some amount of force to effect the arrest. On the stand, he completely did a 180 and said, I was in the wrong. He said, upon hindsight and recollection, I was in the wrong, and Luther Hall was not resisting arrest in any way. So he did change his mind. Now, again, it's important to kind of note here that he's already pleaded guilty. He did indicate he's seeking a more lenient sentence from the federal court because he is seeing potential prison time just like these other officers are. So the defense was kind of hammering on that, saying, did you just change your mind so that you could get a better deal? But he again was saying, no, I need to come up here and tell the truth that Luther Hall was not resisting arrest when we used force on him.
Again, a couple of stories that the generational case, because it is a generational case, the case that involves a former police officer that is responsible for the death of George Floyd, whether that be considered murder by the courts, time will tell as the trial unfolds. There's so much coverage by so many sources on the trial that we will mention it and draw attention to any major things that need attention, but it's getting enough attention that it's not going to be a focus. What is going to be a focus is the impact of the George Floyd trial. And it is going to have an impact no matter what. This, I just don't see a good outcome from this trial. If the police officer is found guilty, there will be a celebration among many. And those celebrating will be targets, plain and simple, potentially. I hope it doesn't ever come to that, but there's so much hate, and we're seeing it on episode after episode on this show. If the police officer is not found guilty, there will be a potential uprising within certain members of certain communities. And neither situation ends well. So we hope for the best. We hope that justice is served. And after justice is served, that would be the end of it. But that's naive in this day and age. I hope I'm proven wrong. I hope I'm a doofus, but I'm incredibly worried about the safety of our country, because the weaker we make ourselves internally, the more weak we become to external threats. And United States has pissed in a lot of other countries' Cheerios in the past, And we shouldn't be surprised if some of those people don't remember. Just something to think about. It's the American Doofus Show. I'll be back very soon with another episode. I am Barry Welsh. I'm your host. It is the American Doofus Show. Don't be a doofus. It's an incredibly dark world. Incredibly dark world. Try to be a light. I love you all. Once again, I'm Barry Welsh. Good night.